katoa me timata te pue me te tehi karakia. Hā ki roto, hā ki waho, kia tau te Māori e kōkiri nei. I ngā piki me ngā heke, ko te rangi Māori e, taku e rapu nei, tihei Mauri Ora. And for those who are not fluent in Te Reo Māori, that means breathe in, breathe out, settle the life force that stirs inside of us. Through the ups and downs, it is peace that we seek. So hopefully that's a nice portent for our panel tonight. Kia ora.
Tēnā koe e Huhana, nau e whakawātea te huarahi kia pai ai tā tātou wāhi, ngā mihi nui ki a koe. Tēnā tātou, e te marae e tuatu nei, he pautoko manoa mo te motu whānui, tēnei te mihi, tēnei te whakarangatira atu a koe, whakatau mai te wairua te Māori me te rangi Māori ki runga i te hunga e hui mai nei. I aku rangatira tēnā ra koutou katoa, kia koutou e te whānau, whakahui mai ki konei i te āhuatanga o te pōnei, tēnā ra koutou katoa. He uri ahau no taranaki whānui ko Ngāsi Mutunga, te iwi ko Miriama Kamo ahau, nā reire tiwi tēnei te mihi nui kia koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā ra koutou katoa. Well, good evening everyone. It's lovely to see you all on this beautiful Wellington evening. And thank you for joining us for this special kōrero where we delve into that powerful place where art, science and nature converge. So you'll note that I did a mihi tūrongo maraeroa here at the Museum of New Zealand, Te Papa Tongarewa. This is the perfect setting for our kōrero. He tino a tāhua tēnei wāhi. Yes, it is beautiful here, but that is a byproduct of what this whare represents. Now, it might be easy to see it as just an example of a contemporary marae, but that would be a disservice to its depth of meaning and whakapapa. Rongo maraeroa is a living embodiment of what we're discussing tonight. Consider where the materials and shapes come from, the kekia that was gathered from the Mohaka River, the black sand from Taranaki and Wanganui, that there are multiple expressions of te taiao in the art, like how birds were wrapped in clay for cooking, how the drilling, gluing and layering of boards was executed with precision for longevity and to hold the fullness of all that comes under its korowai. In this artwork, this living and encompassing expression of whakapapa, we see botanical and ecological knowledge, we see geological knowledge and material chemistry, we see structural engineering excellence. Rongo maraeroa is a place where ideas aren't just presented, they're exchanged. So we are in the perfect place tonight to explore what happens when art, science, nature and mātauranga converge. Now tonight's event is part of the Breathe season supported by the British Council. It reflects something urgent and hopeful, that the biggest challenges facing our planet requires imagination as much as information. So I'd now like to invite Emily Bradney, Political Counsellor at the British High Commission, to speak to us.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Good evening, everybody. Ko Emily Bradney tōku ingoa. Thank you, Miriama, for the kind introduction. My name is Emily Bradney. I'm the Political Counsellor here at the British High Commission in Wellington. And it's really wonderful to be here at Te Papa this evening. I've been in New Zealand for about 18 months now. I've been here several times, and it's always a pleasure to be here. And as Miriama said, it's the perfect place for this kōrero this evening. I'm really delighted to be here, and thank you to all our panellists as well for sharing their time and expertise this evening. I'm really looking forward to hearing from you all. At the High Commission, I look after teams that work across cultural, people-to-people links, Māori engagement, science and technology. I work closely with our climate colleagues and the colleagues who work on the Pacific, foreign policy. So it's a real pleasure to be here at an event that brings a lot of these strands together. I'm also here on behalf of the British Council. My colleagues work in Auckland and they were sadly unable to be here this evening, but that's great for me because it means I can come instead. And The British Council, for those of you that don't know, is the sort of culture and education organisation, and they have spent nearly a century building connections, understanding and trust through their culture and education work. And tonight's event is exactly the kind of creative partnership that they're really proud to back, bringing together technology, science, art, nature, Indigenous perspectives to help us see the world in new ways. I'd also like to acknowledge Marshmallow Laser Feast and welcome Robin McNicholas to New Zealand. It's really fantastic to also showcase contemporary British creativity, digital, immersive, boundary-pushing work that really explores profound themes of nature, science, and technology. And I'm really excited to hear your ideas, as well as the expertise of all our panelists tonight. And before we begin, I'd like to touch on why gatherings like this really matter. As I said, my work covers foreign policy, security policy. We live in a world that is more unstable and frightening than it has been for decades, and both our governments, the UK and New Zealand, recognise the challenges in this world today, the uncertainty, geopolitical tensions, climate change, which is felt acutely in this region. The Pacific is at the forefront of changes. So at times like this, bringing people together, artists, scientists, Indigenous knowledge holders, technologists, storytellers, it's really important to bring diverse perspectives together, different disciplines and worldviews into the same conversation, where we can create new understandings, new possibilities to help us face the challenges of today. And that's at the heart of my work as a diplomat and at the heart of the British Council's work as well. So really delighted to be here tonight, really looking forward to the conversation and learning from you all. And thank you very much for joining us. I'm sure this evening will be very thought-provoking and inspiring. Thank you very much.
Ngā mihi, Emily. We want to acknowledge as well that specialness about this UK Aotearoa connection, so two island nations, two ocean-bound cultures, two histories of science and storytelling shaped by the sea, and the place, as you say, here is where we feel climate change first. So, you know, kōrero like this are so important right now as we look at the way that we can bring different sectors together to speak to each other. And as we'll discover tonight, those aren't different, separate parts of our society. They are already interconnected, so it's really about delving into that. And so we are here tonight because something powerful happens when disciplines stop working in silos, when artists collaborate with marine biologists, when technologists work alongside Indigenous knowledge holders, when science is not just data, but experience. London-based collective Marshmallow Laser Feast, we've got to know where that name came from. When MLF, as it's otherwise known, joins leading researchers and creators to explore how we understand the world and ourselves, inspired by Breathe, Mauri Ora. So this evening, we're asking what happens when technology makes the invisible visible? What shifts when nature is not object, but collaborator? And what might change if we saw ourselves not as separate from the living world, but as part of it? So it's my pleasure to introduce to you now our panellists. We have Rebecca Rice here, Senior Curator Art at Te Papa, who helps shape how we encounter art that shifts perception. Robin McNicholas, co-founder of Marshmallow Laser Feast, whose immersive works translate complex biological systems into experiences you can feel in your body. We're really grateful that you have travelled here all the way from the UK, Robin, to join us on behalf of the MLF Collective. Dr. Dan Hikuroa, Earth Systems Scientist and advocate for weaving mātauranga Māori and Western science. And I've gone in the wrong direction, sorry, Dr. Huhana Smith, I should have said first. Artist and environmental researcher and kaitiaki whose work centres whenua restoration and community. And Dr. Thom Linley. Now, Dr. Thom is a deep-sea scientist and explorer revealing life in the ocean's most hidden realms. He was going to be joining us, and he may still, from Antarctica via Zoom. He's on a ship. It worked perfectly this afternoon. There's technology. Perfectly this afternoon, but we're struggling to get him now. Luckily, we did plan for this possibility. So Dr. Thom will still be part of our kōrero, but he will be joining us by pre-recorded parts during the evening, unless we get him live. So fingers crossed. But kia ora koutou katoa, it's so great to have this lineup here and Dr. Thom as well for this panel. Before we begin, what we're going to do in a moment is we're going to hear from each of our panelists, but I just want to quickly clarify. Marshmallow Laser Feast, Robin. Where does this name come from?
It requires a hike, a swim, several camps before you'll get to the M of marshmallow.
Okay, well, Emily, can you fund us all to get over there to do that?
No, we'll have to spend many more conversations before that transpires.
What? It's a secret?
It's a secret.
Gosh. We have to delve in. We have to go on the journey. I like it. No, absolutely fine. Love it. All right. We'll push you again later on in the evening. Now, as I mentioned, we've asked each of our panellists to begin with a short reflection, not a lecture, a lens. They're going to share with us, in under 3 minutes each, their own personal doorway into where art, science and nature converge for them. We gave them some prompts. They may or may not use them. What does nature as collaborator mean in your work? Where does art and science meet for you? How does your work invite people to feel their connection to the natural world? And as I say, they may have completely different thoughts, and I'm looking forward to hearing them. So let's start, please, with Rebecca.
Kia ora, tēnā koutou katoa, and thank you, Miriama, for your introductions. I'm an art historian. I specialise in the 19th century. So what I've been really excited by working on this exhibition with Thom, my co-curator, bringing Marshmallow Laser Feast here to Aotearoa, New Zealand, has been thinking about how my research into 19th century connects to the present work that you are doing in relation to the natural world. For a long time, I found myself coming back again and again in my research to the same male dead artists. And the challenge was put to a room full of us at a History of Science conference, I think it was in 2015, where it was just like, I have not heard a woman talked about in this context. And so I went away and I was just like, this is my responsibility. I need to think about the gaps in our art histories, the gaps in our knowledge of how we talk about histories of science, how we talk about the contributions made by other people than those who have been kind of entered into these sectors. So I started focusing on 19th century woman flower painters. And what I started thinking was they've been sidelined and then they were reclaimed as lady painters. A lot of their work was dismissed by scientists as being sentimental, as being subjective, not objective, as being amateur rather than professional. But a lot of these women in the 19th century were hugely ambitious. They cared deeply, especially those in Aotearoa, New Zealand, about the world around them. They looked closely at the flora, they drew it, they painted it, and they published. So actually, we are grateful to our women 19th century botanical artists for the first illustrated publications in colour of our Indigenous flora. And that to me is quite remarkable. So I thought, well, if we think about those negative sides of the coin, the subjective, the amateur, the sentimental, as not being negative attributes as they were for much of the 20th century, what about we think of the positive ways that that can actually show us something about a relationship with the natural world? And so that is the thread that I draw in my work and my research between those women and the work of contemporary artists and practitioners like Marshmallow Laser Feast. I'm not wanting to reclaim these women for science or for art, but for that magical place where they connect. So one of the ways I think about these women is as the kind of OG science communicators, right? They want, through their work, through their drawings, their publications, their illustrations, for people to care and love the natural world as much as they do. And in our current moment, as you've outlined, this is crucial. We need to think differently about our relationship to the natural world, and these women, for me, show a connection between the past and the present, between historical and contemporary, and that's the kind of the joy that I bring and the connections I make in my work.
Oh, ngā mihi. Okay, awesome. We're looking forward to hearing a little bit more about that during this evening. Robin?
I'm speaking on behalf of a collective that started nearly 2 decades ago. We're a group of artists who call ourselves experiential artists, which in itself is something difficult to try and explain in a sentence, easier to invite people to experience the work that we make collectively. And I'm just deeply grateful for exhibiting here and having the opportunity to present work that in some ways is wordless. And I think our deep love and respect and pursuit of peace is centered around nature. And upon reflection, from my own lived experience, having experienced a lot of my childhood neck deep in rivers and wandering through forests and finding peace and wordlessness and a connection that I think through a Western lens is often educated out of us. Through a tipping point, having lived through to 2007, where there were more urban dwellers than rural dwellers for the first time in history ever. And what does that mean? Well, as a London-based organisation, it means that half the world are potentially not seeing the stars. Our relationship to the food we eat, the water, our convenience in some ways obfuscates, gets in the way of our relationship to the natural world. And our organisation essentially is fascinated by this web of relationships. And there's all kinds of hypocrisies and contradictions when being an artist, working with rare earth materials, using energy, but telling stories and allowing experiential works to convey messages that we really believe in, that are an attempt at wordless communication of complex systems, webs of relationships that are us and expand planetarily and into the cosmos. We're fascinated by that. We love that. And what's interesting from our perspective and my own web is that the relationships I've built with creative coders have meant that we've been able to have conversations and been able to convert fMRI scans into heart flow data that people can observe and see something that's inside of all of us, something relatable like a pulse, in a different way. And it's collaborating with sound designers and amazing venues like here that execute and present the work in an attempt to essentially convey our inseparability. And for me, just with the earlier conversations that we've had and what this space in terms of conversation has stimulated, I'm excited to talk more.
O kia ora koutou, he uri au no te iwi o Ngāti Tūkorehe, I Kuku. I come from a little place called Kuku, so I'm Doctor Who from Kuku. But I came to the work that I do today. I'm an artist. I am a trained curator. I'm a professor at a university, and I'm at the College of Creative Arts Toiro Whārangi at Massey here in Wellington. But I came to this combination of art, design, nature and science because I was the senior curator here. My previous job before I became majorly into research, I was the senior curator here at Te Papa for nearly 10 years. And I had the privilege of working with the taonga, like the ancestral taonga of Māori in relation to the Pacific here at Te Papa. And that ancestral intelligence that was encapsulated within all of those beautiful taonga, not only the contemporary expressions but also the customary expressions, was very powerful in the sense that these living taonga contain mauri, like they have an energy. And I tell you, there's some serious things go on in the back of house at night around here. And we had two lovely kuia, some elders who used to work there, and things get active here at Te Papa when people are not around. But in saying that kind of activity or that kind of sensibility of Māori to be able to imbue an energy into what appears like a bit of an inanimate object is something extraordinary. And I've always been really enamoured by the sophistication of Māori knowledge systems and Indigenous knowledge systems in that respect. So from that taonga perspective, like what is valued, what is highly prized, I went, oh, look, I'm really, really concerned about the natural world of the world. Like I was, quite, in my 20s, I was deeply concerned about where the planet was going. And 40 years ago, we should have been working on climate change and we haven't. So here we are. But anyway, what that notion of taonga, of working with those ancestral, that ancestral knowledge system within what you see presented here right throughout Te Papa, I took that sensibility and learning back home to Kuku, and I just started working with taonga species. So those beautiful tuna in the stream systems, or the inanga that everyone prized every spring season, there was tuna war, there's what they call white boat wars over where people stand on a river system. But what I was concerned about was that they were not in good health. So the waterways weren't in good health. Our wetlands were drained. Our coastal forests were non-existent. And I think through a lot of the projects I did here at Te Papa, but also the environmental work I was doing at home in Kuku, I had to leave this job and go and focus on replenishing that, replenishing the home environment or the kainga for those taonga species. So I have literally spent the last 25 to 30 years in this kind of arena, like even while I was here at Te Papa. But it's really edifying to know that you can return a wetland forest to a coastal zone. You can replenish a stream system in a short space of time. And you can turn the health of waterways around if you make the concerted effort and take the action. So that action from a TUWHERA perspective is that we imbue all our work that we do. And I mean, since I left Te Papa, I have done numerous research projects that have been funded by government right through up until the present day. And all of our efforts are about reconnecting our people to their whenua, to their awa, their stream system, to their coasts, to the natural environment, because that's where all our knowledge came from. So I just want to say the last kind of reflection is that when we have divorced ourselves from the natural environment, we are damaging ourselves. And I think we're in a really challenging time, and I think it was intimated before, that we are living in extreme precarity because we have lost that connection. So I suppose in sense of my career and what I've been doing over the last, now it's 30 years, is that it's all about reconnecting people to Te Taiao, to the natural world, and to those knowledge systems, which if we all come together, art, science, design, mātauranga Māori, Indigenous-led systems, we will all be well. So we won't be seeing and experiencing what we're seeing today. Yeah, I firmly believe that. So we just need next generations, before they turn grey. Anyway.
Ngā mihi te mārei kura.
O, tēnā koe. O te rā, koutou katoa, hui mai nei. Nei rā te mihi. E mokopuna tēnei a Ngāti Manipoto, me Ngāti Whanaunga, me Ngāti Mahuta. So just a grandchild of those three iwi from the north part of this, or the mid part of this island. And when I think about how I might reflect and preparing for a little bit of a kōrero tonight, I often get asked to provide a bio for things, and usually they want information like where you went to the university and all the letters and the nonsense stuff. Typically I answer with I'm a father and I'm a surfer and a gardener, the really important kind of things in life. But actually the salient point I say to them is my job is about realising dreams and solving challenges. And I work with communities across Aotearoa and increasingly around the world in doing that. And as I reflect back now on almost 3 decades of that work, I've come to realise that what underpins it and has done for a long time is this idea of being a good ancestor. And I see that as an expression of what it means to be Indigenous, you know, simultaneously thinking about the past, the present, and the future, making decisions with intergenerational framings in mind. And it's a deeply rooted concept that emphasises that intergenerational responsibility, that environmental guardianship, and building on from what others have said, connection with the natural world, of which we see ourselves as part of, not apart from. And so it's from there that I start to think about how does the, you know, science, art, culture, Indigenous knowledge, and I think about my experiences, and for many of the communities I work with happen to be Māori communities. Those distinctions don't make any sense because they're all just part of the one thing. I mean, as Miriama has already alluded to and pointed out, all this beautifully aesthetic artwork around us is simultaneously reflecting and instructing us about the world of which we are a part. We just need to tune into it. And I really pick up on your point there that our connection with nature as kin is one thing, but she's also our teacher. And so I for many years, I was trained as a scientist, and I thought that I would find the knowledge and I would conquer this, and it's quite humbling and actually really an amazing step when you realise that actually no, it's not about me, the scientist, or anyone. It's actually about when you attune yourself to the natural world, then the knowledge that was there all along will reveal itself to you. And it was some rongoa practitioners who shared that knowledge with me. And so that's why I was just delighted to come along tonight to work with the team. I must confess I'd never heard of Marshmallow Laser Feast before this invitation, but all my friends know about it now, and similarly, and colleagues, because it's trying to do what this surrounds and it expresses in a different way what I've been trying to do with the communities that I work with. So tomorrow I travel to Gisborne, where we've been working with the community there on a project called Let the River Speak, and I think it reflects really strongly what we've all spoken about here tonight. And let me tell you, that river, along with many others, it hasn't just been speaking, it's been screaming and shouting at us. And if only we would listen. And so for me, being a good ancestor means shifting from what I got trained as a scientist to focus on the what, to really focusing as well as the what on the why. And also shifting from the tools of how we might know something to how we might feel something. And I think it's having gone through the incredible exhibition and the VR experience earlier today, I felt that, I sensed that. And maybe just in closing, and I shared with Robin afterwards, when I had the VR headset on and we were just in this incredible experience, I was in my mind reliving the Māori creation stories through Te Kore, Te Pō, and all those different stages. And then I was able to relate the rushing things, tai temu, tai pare, and then there was a little kind of vortex just down there. Oh, that's te parata. And that was my cultural lens and take on what you had all created on the other side of the world. But it showed that actually, if we're thinking about being Indigenous, we're all Indigenous to this world. And I think the work there really expressed that to me.
Aye. Yeah, he whakaroa tāhua ngā mihi te whatikura. In a minute, we're going to play a wee clip from Marshmallow Laser Feast. But first, let's meet Dr. Thom Linley, with great hope that it's going to be a pre-record, but with great hope that later in this conversation he'll be with us live. But let's meet Dr. Thom.
Hi, surprise. Tēnā koutou.
Oh, you are live. Oh,
who would have thought? I am, sorry to surprise you. I was a pre-record and then I answered you. So in the spirit of the show and of pushing technology in order to forge connection, I am attempting to join from the Antarctic. My name is Dr. Thom Linley. I'm a fish curator here at the National Museum of New Zealand, Te Whera, and I am currently in the field in Antarctica on the hunt for the colossal squid with a new camera system we've designed. So wish us luck out here. But because of this incredible technological age we live in, I am going to attempt to join you live for as long as I can. I'm sorry if it cuts out. I'm bouncing off many satellites. But I really wanted to be part of this conversation if we could make it happen. I wouldn't be studying the natural world if it didn't speak to me and resonate with me. I feel that curiosity and drive of a scientist comes from a love and a want to understand, in the sense that there is a lot more here than I'm seeing at the surface, that I want to know more in order to understand more, to unlock further layers. I enjoy acknowledging my connection to the natural world. I think a lot of us are suffering right now due to a degree of separation. I think cities are very efficient. I think they get a lot of things done, but it's not our natural habitat. And I think some of us are struggling because we're not in our natural habitat. You know, we're sort of stressed like animals in a zoo because this doesn't feel connected. We've lost that extra thing. And that's what I feel the show sort of sings about. Even, you know, if you subscribe to the single point origin of life, that life evolved from a single point, that means that every single living thing on this planet is a member of your family. And you can feel that connection. You can be proud of how fast your distant cheetah cousin can run. And you can be proud of how mighty a redwood is. And I really like that sort of oneness that comes with that. And there's nothing unscientific about that. You know, some of my friends roll their eyes a little bit and are maybe getting a bit too new age, but it's all right there. It's all right there. And to touch upon some of the points that have been said, I've really enjoyed going through the exhibition with so many people from so many different cultures, and time again hearing, oh, we have a word for this. Oh, we've talked about this. And they're reconnecting with their own culture and their own history, because humans pay attention and they notice things and they like to feel connected to the world around them because it sustains us, it keeps us alive. And so people all around the world have forged these connections. And it's only quite recently that we've started to struggle to make those connections because we've maybe isolated ourselves a little bit too much from the natural world.
Oh, man.
Thank you.
I really love that you said that, Thom, that, you know, we are all related and connected, that life is connected. Because, you know, we think these things and then sometimes we need a scientist to actually validate what people say. Oh, she's a bit crazy, isn't she? She thinks that. But yes, I absolutely agree with you, and I love that you have said that. And it's just so lovely to have you live. Thank you so much for keeping on, attempting to join us, and hopefully we'll be able to keep you live through this discussion. And thank you all again. I'm looking forward to this kōrero. What we're going to do first, though, is we're going to have a little look at a clip from Marshmallow Laser Feast. Let's take a look.
I'm Arsen. I'm an artist and director of London-based experiential collective, Marshmallow Laser Feast. We are a collective of artists, makers, designers, who are working with biology, ecology, botany. We work with screen-based media, real-time computing, and multisensory storytelling to create experiences that are often inspired by the living world and our relationship to it. We utilize all new technologies as a lens, as an enabler to express something that wouldn't be possible otherwise. So in that respect, it's a tool for us to see the world beyond the limits of human senses. We get really excited by the ability to create moments, express certain feelings, but also bring participatory action of audiences into our work. Being in nature is quite an essential part of our practice, immersing ourselves in a location first and trying to untangle the unique features and the stories that we can take and implement into our experiences. How it feels to be there is always a starting point. And then comes the research phase. Ecological surveys, LiDAR scanning, photogrammetry, field recordings. It's a huge data and experience gathering process that is sometimes tucked away and hidden inside of the experience. Other times it becomes the main defining factor of how it looks, how it sounds, and how it feels. Works of nature is a culmination of 5 works that are primarily trying to communicate one unified message, that your body doesn't end with your skin, and you can extend your sense of self to include forests and entire living web of beings. And looking at the world with this understanding of, if you hold on to something, it's always entangled with other things. And by simply tracing the threads, you can see the interconnectedness of all living beings. It's really important to feel that you are part of this living earth and expanding yourself into it. You are doing it not because you have to, you are doing it because you are in love. So it's really important for us to create a positive message. Here are all the magical, miraculous things that happens all around you, and you are part of it. And if you can care for it today, you will care for it tomorrow.
Oh, it's so beautiful. The artwork is, as we've heard tonight, and as most of you have probably seen, is stunning. It's mind-blowing. So, Robin, it was interesting. I saw something recently where you said, obviously it's underpinned by incredible tech, but it's not what drives it. The tech takes a back seat to what the work is actually all about. Can you explain that?
Yeah, we've found ourselves working with technologists to convey and tell stories. And as I mentioned earlier, with regards to data and what was touched on in the film there, is that seeing the unseen and allowing us to expose the vascular system of a tree, the rewards come when a 7-year-old sees our work and you overhear them talking about their blood system. When looking at a kapok tree, all of a sudden it feels like we're stimulating a conversation that, again, is enabled by technology, but we really try and leapfrog that zeitgeist element. We often use technology to lure young people in because, I think everyone would probably identify with get a phone out and children will gravitate toward, well, my children certainly gravitate towards it. And so there's this infatuation with screen culture, and we're working with that essentially. And it requires us to engage, be mindful, and grasp the zeitgeist of the moment, whether it's virtual reality or at the moment it's AI, and thinking about how we can use it to tell the stories we want to tell. Yeah.
And showing off those connections between all the things that we're talking about tonight. I mean, one thing you might want to look into is plant blindness. Is just something that, I learned a little bit about through Robin's work. And that the work, deliberately makes mycelial networks, breath, ocean systems visible. These are things, Dan, that mātauranga Māori has long recognised. We've long had these interconnections. So is technology just catching up to Indigenous knowledge?
Yeah, pretty much. Sorry. But I don't want to say the just. Technology is catching up.
Yeah.
But it's that interface where the technology can weave in with those Indigenous ways of knowing and being and doing. That's where the magic is, and I really liked your description earlier, Rebecca. And we work with technologists a lot. For example, the project Let the River Speak. Part of that is about recreating a digital river. We produced tons of technical reports, and they didn't change any minds or change any perspectives until we did a real simple graphic and just showed this is where the river flowed in the past, this is where our model predicts it'll flow in the future, i.e. don't build there, don't plant your trees there, but maybe build there and plant your trees there. And it was only through engaging with the tech and with the visualisation that we were able to get traction and movement. So it wasn't, people knew because they could read the words, but they didn't feel. And so it was really shifting from that no-feel knowing, to the feeling element, which was what that the tech enabled. And maybe just to give one more quick example, this idea of Māori, the breathe, Mauri Ora, and making this the unseen seen. That element of being somewhere where you just feel life itself may have started there. I visited Waikato Pupu Springs, near Tākaka, a few times now. Every time I go there, you just pause and you think, life itself could have started right here. You just feel it's buzzing. I was snorkeling earlier this week up on the Mokohino Islands, or the Poor Knights. If you've ever been in a place like that, no amount of metrics are going to explain the feeling you had, and that feeling is that Māori. And so it's that sense we got through the work with the technology. If that can bring that in, because not everyone can go to the Mokohinos or the Poor Knights or Waikato Pupu, but if they can have that experience, they can connect.
Well, what we really want, Rebecca, is we want seeing to lead to caring. Is that what's happening? Is that, how do we do that?
Picking up on what Dan was saying, I think the relationship between art and science is something I've been thinking a lot about over the last few months, but also the last many, many years. And to bring many people on board with your work, I started looking to kind of art historical examples of where art and science has had that really close relationship of trying to make the unseen seen. And it's a constant presence in our art histories. I was looking to people like, Frederick Church, who in the 19th century made these magnificent landscapes as huge as the screen behind us, inspired by the research that Alexander Humboldt was doing in the South America. And he was the father of ecology. And then this artist wants to try and convey this way of thinking about the world to his audience. So he paints this huge painting that tours like a theatrical experience around the States. So my point being, art has always worked to reveal these different ways of thinking, and something that I read about your work is that this trying to convey the emotional resonance in scientific stories. Artists have always been doing that, and I think that is how they make people feel. That is how the data takes on a life of its own, and that is hopefully how people then look at your work, and yes, it screams, and yes, it's inside the building, but I think we're really lucky here in Wellington as well. You go outside and there is the ocean, there's Bush City right there. As you said, you can be at Zealandia in 20 minutes. So we hope that, and maybe we'll capture this in some of our data from our visitors, that it does inspire them to think differently when they step outside of that exhibition.
Thom, are you still with us?
I am.
Oh, fabulous. All right. You've seen parts of the planet that very few humans have seen, and we're talking about making the unseen seen. For you, what responsibility comes with seeing, with witnessing?
I think I need to tap into as many channels of communication as possible. I will write a scientific paper, I will do stats, I will take something inspiring and beautiful, and I will render it down to some numbers and data. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is achieving something that we need to achieve. But as I touched upon with writing many reports, it's not resonating with people. We communicate through stories, we share knowledge through stories, and we are really emotional beings, and we communicate best through our emotions and through that sharing. So that frustration led me to starting the podcast I run, because I realized I was yelling about the research I was doing, but I wasn't speaking everyone's language. And that's why I love working with artists and embracing art, because that is, maybe even before we were verbal, maybe that's one of our oldest forms of communication. And it taps onto a different channel. It feels like you're communicating on a different channel. You're speaking directly to the emotional, but that doesn't mean it's not factual. That doesn't mean it's not containing information. You're just resonating with people along that wavelength. And then you've got a foundation that you can build some more nuance, some more sort of data-driven stuff on. But if we're not communicating on that same base level, there was a form of statistics. I'm going off on a tangent here, but I think it really proves the point. There's a form of statistics where you create, instead of graphs, human faces. So for anything in nature will have so many factors going on that it's hard to take in all that information at once. And so somebody realized that if you change all the data into a human face, if you change it into the width of the nose and the shape of the nostrils and the color of the eyes, it taps into that incredibly efficient part of our brain that handles, I can remember what 400 people look like. And so it just feels along those lines, really. We've got to embrace these new ways of communicating and these old ways of communicating, really, that maybe we've forgotten how to do. So I speak a very specific language when I'm talking to other scientists and when I'm writing scientific reports, because I don't want to contaminate data with my personal perception and my prejudices and my bias as well. But at the same time, when I'm engaging with a human being to share my knowledge, it's got to be human. It's closer to the art than the science then. I've got to engage with another human being as a human.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this makes me think about, as I listen to Thom as a scientist talking, Dan and Huhana, about mātauranga Māori and Western science and where they meet and how they relate to each other.
Am I on? Oh, yeah, sorry. They meet when you bring them together. So I think over the last, let's say from 2010, I've been involved in a lot of environmental research projects, which is all about revitalising what's missing. So it's returning to taiao, to whenua again. So we can ask amongst our iwi participants and our kaitiaki Māori, like, okay, has anyone done a wetland forest before? No, we were part of the drainage, and others who leased our land, drained and felled forest and all that kind of thing. It's very easy to cut a forest down and drain a wetland with machinery. It's really hard to pull one back. So we had to learn how to do that. So in doing that, because I'm an artist, so I have a visual sense about what it should look like. I'm a painter, but I can't paint fast enough. And also, I'm just not digitally savvy enough to kind of create what you see in your head. So, okay, I paint, but I also make installations and that kind of thing. So my art practice is really about the ability to see, and then who do we see to bring together? So you bring, okay, we've got some issues around here. We need a hydrologist, we need an archaeoseismologist, because we're also a seismic country, so you can't forget about that kind of complexity that we deal with. We're in a floodplain. Oh, okay, we need a fluvial geomorphologist. And, so I learn all about these names of these different science groups because we pull them together to say, help us return a forest to a drained wetland. And I think, so pulling all the right people together, so collaborations of the right minds. And in a Māori way, they call it the rai. The rai is this frontal lobe, this is the part of the brain that is about consequences. So if you're not thinking very well with this part of the brain, you might make the wrong decision. So when we were collaborating with people, it was all about bringing the right tarai together. So all of these minds would meet, and then we would literally visualise how it was going to be using art and design visual systems with all of those different sciences and how they all had to come together. So I just want to say that there was a particular method that we perfected. So, and I think Robin's talked about it, Thom's talked about it, is that you get out on the whenua and you walk and talk it with all these people you don't know. And by the end of the 3-day walk, when you've walked between Otaki and Waikawa River, you know these people by the end. And then you also walking up waterways and up systems and drained wetlands, and you're all kind of sensing, feeling and embodying what's wrong. And then you go, okay, how do we fix this up? So all the brains come together again, and then you start manifesting what are the key recommendations that need to be done. Okay, the science data kicks in, the various things kick in, but when you come to do this kind of work, it's a lot of work, it's hard work, it's physical work, and it's long field work. So don't be shy, anybody, if you feel like taking on a forest project, because we really do need to accelerate this work. We're not working fast enough. So
yeah.
We have methods and they work. Yeah.
And it's interesting, isn't it, too, with, it's awesome hearing about all those relationships. I often feel with Western science and mātauranga Māori that we see Western science models as the real science. And mātauranga Māori is this lovely thing that people talk about and they take a little bit too seriously. It's not really science. It's just not the case.
Not
Dan.
the case.
No, not at all. We can demonstrably show that much mātauranga is reliable, is accurate, is precise. It's actually been generated consistent with the scientific method. It just developed here, independent and outside of any understanding of that. Science, at its simplest, is just a really good way of producing reliable information. And as a scientist, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. In fact, what I'm saying is it's terrific. But there's other ways of knowing and being and doing. But what mātauranga also has is information that sits outside of being generated using that method. And we don't seek to try and separate them out. We say, actually, when I felt the creation of rangi and papa and te kore te pō, when I experienced that, I have no empirical basis for knowing how that happened. That doesn't make it any less valid to me as a way of making sense of the world. And so, for those who think that mātauranga should be dismissed or set aside as something that we can't rely on, absolutely not. There's no way that our ancestors got around the Pacific, without that sophisticated knowledge. So, to be crystal clear, much of it could more or less be called science. We choose to not do that because we might explain it and invoke our heroes like Maui. And if we think, if we remember the words, I can explain every natural phenomenon, and I know some of you have heard those words, that's because that was Maui's job. When we had to look and understand seasonality, look and understand where fire came from, volcanic activity, where islands have formed, we observed those phenomena and then invoked Maui to codify it and explain it. It's no less reliable or accurate.
That's right. And crossing the world's greatest stretch of water to make it to Aotearoa isn't something you do by accident. You need the science. And I loved how Thom was talking about his perspective earlier, because it shows that there is that connection between Western science and mātauranga Māori, that when you think about the connections between everyone and everything, it proves the point. Robin, when artists work with scientists and researchers, what makes that collaboration really work? Is it humility? Is it curiosity? Is it trust? Is it all those things? How do you see it working?
It's the joy of collaboration, and it's the joy of encountering obsessed individuals. For me, that's the lifeblood. And to encounter people who will dedicate their life to understanding a colossal squid and the sensory perspective of said creature. I think it's fascinating that, and that's a quality that we can all celebrate, and we all know people, and we all know that magic of when you become obsessed, and it can be anything. But I think the rewards of collaboration as an artist that works with venues who understand the space through years and years of experience, who understand the flow of audiences, the behaviours of audiences, the risks involved, and all of these wonderful challenges. It's just that's the fuel for us, really, is the joy of collaboration. So there is curiosity, there is all of the things you mentioned, but I think our collective practice in some way reflects collectivity over individuality as well.
So, you mentioned the way that Te Papa facilitates this. Rebecca, how should Te Papa hold space for this kind of convergence?
Te Papa, as Hu has kind of indicated, has quite a long history of, I think, doing quite good work in this space. We are a national museum and an art gallery come together by Act in 1992, but I'm always going to put my art historical hat on. And for me, Te Papa was also the 19th century version of itself, when art and science and ethnology and natural history and photography and plaster busts all coexisted in a space in a funny little building over by current day Parliament. So for me, the way that we are able here to work across disciplines in a really productive interdisciplinary way is such a wonderful thing. So, you know, if I'm looking at a painting at auction and I'm picturing some kind of flowers, and I just fire off an email to my botanists across the hallway and go, hey, does this look like such and such to you? And they go, oh my God, yes. And so that kind of collaborative relationship around the collections is really powerful. And I really value those relationships and the knowledges that come out of the conversations that we can have about our collections, both historical and about things that we're seeking to kind of grow and develop.
I mean, they definitely tell the stories of today as well, so that's always really critical. And I mean, what you were talking about before, that mātauranga Māori perspective where we see time all happening at once, that's critical, the past, present and future, because our ancestral knowledge informs our future. So that's really where we should be looking, and Māori always see their ancestors in front of their faces. So hence our constant acknowledgement to those who've passed away from us, but they are there to guide. So that's really critical. I just wanted to add a little bit more about that kind of mātauranga Māori lens as well, because it works really well when sciences do come in mutual respect. So we may hear things out there in governance world about, oh, we must only focus on this and there's, you know, you can see it happening, but not for long, maybe not for long. By the end of this year, it might be a little bit different and start flipping back the other way, and you know who I'm talking about. But we do have systems of understanding, and when we come together in mutual respect, when you have, you know, strong mātauranga Māori leaders, you know, and these can be really local people. These are not, you know, these are not academics per se. These are like, they're all at home, you know, in Kuku. When you've lived in a place for long enough and accumulated long-term associations and relationships with the place, you are a font of exceptional knowledge. And you might go, oh, my auntie might say, oh, I don't know anything. It's like when she starts talking, she's talking absolute volumes in terms of knowing how to be and live well in a space. So I think just a couple of things I just wanted to mention before, just in relation to Dan was saying, is that we have kōrero tuku iho. We have stories that are passed down or passed to us, not necessarily down, sideways, whatever, up. But that kōrero tuku iho is really critical for understanding what you need to do to make change, makes positive change. And then also whakapapa, I think we were talking about it earlier, is the interconnections between everything. And I really felt that in Evolva, like watching Evolva, that whole sense of being inside an ancestor is what I felt. Like we were inside, when you see like, oh, they're ribs, oh, and looking down, looking up, which way were we looking? But it was an incredible sense of embodiment.
Just hold you.
Being inside a living ancestor. It was amazing. Oh, sorry. When we were living inside a living ancestor, like we were inside a living ancestor. That really resonated. So well done, you guys.
It is really
cool.
beautiful.
Anyway,
in a minute, I want to come out to everybody here because we're going to a Q&A. So we will have microphones coming around if you have any questions of our panellists, and we urge you to take the opportunity to ask any questions that you have. But I want to go to Thom. Before we go into our audience Q&A, to get your thoughts, Thom, on reimagining relationships. And if you can just share with us, you know, the shift that we'd like to see facilitated from humans observing nature to humans as nature, because so often we see ourselves outside of it or on top of it. We're superior, we run the world, that sort of thing, but actually we are part of the world. And so the benefit of that, Thom, I think you could speak to beautifully, hopefully if you're still there, given that you are essentially as close to nature as you could be on the freezing Southern Ocean.
It certainly humbles me. So I can look out the window and I can see a seal drift past on a block of ice, and it looks like it's on a sun lounger. It looks like it's having the best nap I can imagine. I'm really jealous of the seal. I would be dead in 10 minutes if I lay down next to it. And I find that incredible. The animals that I work with, particularly the snailfish that live deep down in the trenches, the molecules that make up its body start to break down at atmospheric pressure. It comes from a place so different from me, so separate from me, that even dead, we can't occupy the same space. And that is incredible. And to get outside of myself is the only way of fully understanding and fully seeing the things that I study. But then that sort of wraps around. I've almost stepped so far out of myself that I've found myself again, if I realize. And that's a big theme of the show as well. You know, you do not end at your skin. We are an ecosystem in ourselves. We are it's sort of governed by our gut-brain axis as well. The microbes within our guts are a part of us as much as they're a community to themselves. And there's a lot of recent research is sort of pointing out that the immune system isn't so much a warden, isn't so much a warring faction as an ambassador that negotiates our relationship with inside and outside of our own bodies. And so the lines get really, really blurred. And I find that a really enjoyable space to work in. And it gives me sort of clarity to properly see it. Even when you draw the tree of life, we like to put the humans at the top. But we can't even make vitamin C. That's rubbish. Some of the animals can. We forgot how to make it because it was fulfilled by our diet, because we were sustained by the things around us that we didn't need to make it anymore. So when we had that mutation and lost that ability, the ecosystem around us sort of supported us. It was in our diet anyway. And then we decided to start traveling and we got scurvy. But I think it's important to really feel a sense and the connection, but also be able to step out of yourself and realize that there's these hidden realms, that there's these other worlds, very real and all around you, that you just don't perceive the right wavelength, or you need sonar to see, or you need to detect magnetic fields. There are fish that will spawn and reproduce in 2 totally different tanks as long as you give them a copper wire, and they'll communicate and court each other with electrical impulses through that copper wire. And you've just got to be open to completely invisible forms of communication that are all around you.
Fabulous. I can see, Robin, you've got some comment to make on that too? Reimagining our relationships. I mean, when I watched your artwork, you know what Thom's saying, we don't stop at our skin. And it made me think of your artwork when he said that we have, communities and colonies inside of us, at our skin, beyond us.
Well, yeah, I think that asking the question, where do we begin and where do we end, is just fascinating. And it's just peculiar how we ever detached from something so integrated. I love to think about how and why we evolved to experience flavour, and the joys of the way in which we've evolved, and the way in which taste can unite us is fascinating. And similarly, cats, poor things, can he taste sweet stuff? And just all these evolutionary traits are so ethereal. And here we are in this brief moment in time with the senses that we have, but the understanding now that there are so many other senses beyond the limits of us, that so much of the living world experiences. So the umwelt of the different sensory perspective of non-human entities becomes really fascinating as well. And so questions such as, does dolphins dream in sonar emerge, and it's nice to allow ourselves to wonder and to allow and marvel at the fact that we have the ability to do that, and it crosses over. In dreams were mentioned earlier, in virtual reality. For us, it captured our imagination because of its similarities. It seems that the experience of virtual reality lodges itself in a similar space in the brain, or cluster of neurons, to that of the dream world and the dream space, and that again, is something that inspires us.
Yeah, absolutely. Any questions? If we've got those microphones, are they just at the back there? Yeah, so if you want, just pop your hand up, we'll bring you a microphone and you can ask any questions of our panel. Don't dash it at everybody, just one at a time.
Tēnā koutou, thank you all for your whakaaro. I was wondering what your thoughts on the role of our rangatahi or of our young people are in this space and what they can kind of bring into these areas with the kind of realm that they sit in.
Yeah, kia ora, great question. The role I have at a university is an extremely important one and one I take very seriously. My job isn't to create more Dans. My job is to create better than Dans. And I'm just thinking about the 16 or 17 doctoral candidates that I'm supervising right now. So at the kind of very, they're coming through, some of them have come through kura kaupapa Māori. They can simultaneously think in two languages and two worldviews. They're already better than me. And increasingly they're using artwork and weaving and using whakapapa to explain magma bodies coming up through the Taupo volcanic zone. So for me, rangatahi are key to this. They are already imagining things that I can't imagine, so I think I'm doing my job.
And I just want to tautoko all that as well. I want to support what you just said, Dan, because these kids in the next generation or the generation that we engage with, you know, whether they're 18, 19, 20, whatever, but and even those who are in high school or kura, they're exceptional. They're the facility for them to think in a global way and to see themselves really grounded. I have great hope. And if we're talking about young Māori, young Pacific and that kind of thing, I've got great hope. These kids are sharp. And all we do is just guide them and then maybe don't do the things we did in our 20s. But they're not doing that anyway, I notice. All these kids are very, very tidy and behaving themselves. But anyway... But yeah, I do feel a lot of hope in terms of the young people in Aotearoa and around the world at the moment because they have anxieties and concerns, but they're also being fed so much information that I think they can synthesise. We just have to guide them through the rough patches when it gets a bit tough, maybe. Because you do, life when you're young is tough. But I do feel a great sense of hope. And I just feed them what they need to know. And I also feed them really good food because they come and help me on the farm. So that's what you do with rangatahi. You get them to work.
Yeah, and
feed them.
Perhaps because they have so much going on and they have so much input and stimulus and so on, maybe they're a better place than ever to facilitate the kind of relationships that we need between what traditionally are thought of as silos.
Yeah.
I wanted to share, we had a workshop several years ago with high school students talking about the demise of art history as a program, and we were wanting to find out from them what they wanted to learn, what they thought, and what I realised after that workshop was they didn't think in disciplines. They thought in terms of big ideas, big themes. They wanted to learn about, you know, just the whole romantic period. They wanted to learn about creativity. They didn't want to learn about art history or science or... And so that was also really beautiful. And then we've had a number of interns over the last few years working on this amazing body of botanical drawings by Nancy Adams, remarkable 20th century botanist and artist. And we've taken, you know, a science student and an art history student, but 9 times out of 10 they're also studying ecology, or the botany student did art history at high school, and so I love the fact that I'm seeing that, you know, interdisciplinary thirst, I guess, coming through, and they're not dreaming in silos. They're not seeing those disciplines.
Compartmentalised.
No, they're not.
And it's great. They do flow really well.
Any other questions? think we've got one coming up and one also at the back here too.
Kia ora. Amazing talks. Just a bit of background. I'm actually someone who has a nice bachelor background on these sort of like interconnected sort of discipline sort of studies in creative technologies from Auckland University of Technology. And it gives me a little bit of like some, I guess, like rangatahi anxiety, as already been mentioned, that in 2025, Auckland University of Technology gave with great enthusiasm to completely kill the program that I was in the bachelor's of. And when I graduated, it basically gave me the realization of, is the obsession, as many of you already mentioned, is that obsession even worth it? To believe in these sort of like unsiloed sort of like beliefs when you have a university that literally says there's no hope for you, and as well as like a profession or a career. Do you have any of that sort of underlying anxiety as well as those who have years who have worked in those things, especially if for those from like the Marshmallow Collective as well, has that been an anxiety that's been also growing, especially in recent years?
Yes, there's a constant concern. And as an organisation who are based in a city like London, there's, you know, with 14 families to feed, there are 14 of us. There's economic, there's all kinds of cycling pressures, expected pressures, but we've, through our process, what we've realized is that the cosmos communicates to us. And I think that we found our path by trusting our collective heart.
Yeah.
And it's kind of weird saying it because it's so hippy-dippy. However, I really mean it, that in some ways the obsession is the thing that we need to savor, and it's the tenacity and going through the turbulence of it, and getting through the other side. We've been through so many other sides now in our collective life together that we've realized, oh, it's the journey. It's always been about the blooming journey. And so I wholeheartedly encourage you to use the nullation of the particular course to be the fuel that propels you into a further obsession. I really urge you to do that.
Yeah.
And so my training is in paleontology. I can describe shellfish that lived 150 million years ago. That skill set on its own did not prepare me to be working with communities to help try and realise dreams and solve challenges. Instead, that took an approach which is seeing yourself as that good ancestor, drawing from all available knowledge, and building teams. The collaboration is so critical. And so as someone who's been working in, you know, what's become very vogue in this kind of interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary, whatever, it was about, what does the community want? Okay, that's us, let's go. And that's what's driven me.
Perfect. We had one more question down the back here.
Kia ora. Uklama, Everett Watson, Histak Shitla Tsisha. Hi, my name's Everett Watson. I'm from other side of the Pacific, a few 100 kilometers just north of that amazing redwood that we all experienced in the exhibit recently. My question relates to the topic of communication. It's been mentioned many, many times at this panel, and you know, this exhibition as a way of communicating both emotively and visually the unseen. My question is, how can, especially everyone in this room and everyone who walks through this exhibition, be able to bridge the gap from this beautiful curated space and be able to help share this communication piece going forward. I also come from an educational background, really interesting the facial shape of even text elevates that ability to be communicated. So thinking of the hierarchy of like human communication, how can we use technology, art, and education to better communicate this sort of understanding of interconnectedness going forward? I often think augmented reality, so you can take an experience like this to the streets and the sidewalks and show the energy flow of a dandelion coming through the sidewalk. But big question.
Thank you. Rebecca? Yeah, and I will ask Thom. Would you rather go Thom first? Yeah, Thom, did you hear that question?
I did. It's a great one. It weighs heavy on me too. And I think just try and find your channel. You can't speak on every wavelength. You can't speak for everyone. But if you look left and right, there is somebody with a different skill set who is trying to do the same thing. So I'm really dyslexic, and it's been something that a challenge I've really found, especially in an academic field. And everyone was saying, like, you've got to do science communication, you've got to write a blog, because blogs were the thing. And writing just is a massive slog for me. It's really tough. But I liked podcasts. And so I thought, well, what if I do that? Because it's the message that's important. It doesn't matter if it's text or not. But I know also and appreciate that some people like to read. They like to take things in visually. And so I think I just need to collaborate with as many people as possible. That's why I enjoy working with artists, because they communicate the things I'm trying to do so much better than me. And actually it's a feedback loop, because they see things and they see connections that I have missed. Sorry, the sun's coming around and it's a problem being on a moving platform. And to spread wide, if something is difficult, sort of embrace your strengths. Don't try and do everything. And it's always about engaging with people. Technology, like a hyperspectral camera, will make you realize how many birds and plants are communicating in ways we can't see. You can buy a bat detector and you realize actually bats are talking all the time, but you can't hear them because it's outside of our field, our range of hearing. But it's maybe enough to talk about those things and to share that with people and invite them for maybe a thought exercise. So with my son, I chat a lot. Well, what might it be like to be that animal? What will you see? How are you going to move around? Because remember, they can't do this, they can't do that, but they can do this. And almost as a thought experiment. But it's just as varied with the person you're communicating with. You've got to find their channel as well. And some people are going to be reached by art. Some people are going to be reached by music, text, the spoken word. But don't feel you have to do it all. Just do what comes naturally to you, feed on your own human strengths. And I do think it always comes back to the human. It always comes back to engaging with another human being. We're social animals. Don't fight it, do what comes naturally. But share the knowledge and things that you find really engaging. And people feed off that. Robin talked about that, how exciting it is to talk to someone who's passionate about something, even if it's not something you're interested in. I love talking to people about their hobbies, because there's so much energy when you get them on their thing. Even if it's something I've got no interest in, I'd like to hear why it speaks to them.
Yeah, that is so true. Rebecca, what do you want everyone to go away and do tonight? What kind of message do you want them to communicate going forward?
Come to the exhibition, tell all your friends. I've just loved hearing all these perspectives tonight. It's been my dream panel. So I just want, and myself, I'm processing everything that everyone's been saying, but I loved those themes of hope that were coming through, that change is possible if we collectively work towards it. And I do think that the work that Marshmallow Laser Feast has done to kind of bring this exhibition together and share it does kind of just spark something in our brains about different ways of thinking. So I want us to take that out into the world and share it with everyone. And yeah, let's plant more trees and
plant seeds that can grow and bring all of our different disciplines together. We're going to end our panel with a final whakaaro from each of our panellists. And Dan, can we start with you? We've got about sort of 5 minutes max, which is roughly about 1 minute each.
Ka pai, well, I'll be quicker than that. And I've already kind of given you a bit of a preface, but if the idea of being a good ancestor has spoken to you, you know, underpinning those ideas of interconnectedness, of living in the past, present and future, you know, and that underpins what it means to be Indigenous, then I just remind us all that we are Indigenous to this planet. And so that's your invitation to start thinking and behaving that way. So kia ora mai tātou.
Ai, kia ora.
I think I want to just... Like everything is a created moment, and I really love the notion of like Māori understanding of whakapapa, which is like a genealogical reference system which connects everything, and everything is interdependent. But one of the kind of creative elements of it is that it's all about creative potential. It's all about always about things coming into being. So I think if I was to leave a key thought for people here tonight is just when you leave here, and for all those young ones who made, you know, what could we do, how could it be, it's your creative potential. You're in charge of that, and then you're in charge of drawing the right people together to help manifest that further. And yeah, that's what I think about. It's like everyone, we have the creative potential to see and make a world different to what we're experiencing at the moment. And I really do think that's our ultimate role in life at this moment. Kia ora.
I'd like to suggest the thing I mentioned about the dolphins and whether they dream in sonar. I actually pulled on that thread and chatted a wee bit to a few specialists, and the results were disappointing. However, once I addressed that particular and kind of scratched that curious itch, it just leads to the next. And so realizing that this curiosity is an opportunity to engage, and regardless of any answers you discover, there's this need for collective engagement. And I think it was wonderful to hear about peace earlier, and I think that it is within all of us as well, and there's just a fascinating system that seems to override this natural instinct. And I think that peace and curiosity coexist. And so that's what I'll leave you with.
Kia ora, Robin. Ngā mihi. Rebecca.
Oh, that's really hard to top. But I think that questioning impulse, and again, I love those questions that are provoked and that inspire your work. You know, how does a dragonfly see? Does the dolphin dream in sonar? So I think, yeah, be curious, be caring, be emotional, feel when one is in nature, take deep breaths. That's really important.
Yeah.
And yeah, let's work together into the future.
Nice. Yeah. And Thom?
Oh, some really, really good points. I suppose the only thing I could add to it is to encourage everyone to slow down and just take things in a little bit more. We seem to have this engineered, frantic sense of urgency, and I feel we're constantly in a state of fight or flight because we're sort of driving for maximum efficiency, and it's not how we're meant to be all the time. So wherever it is, even if it's just a local garden, I just encourage everyone to take some time and slow down and don't think about all the other things you need to do and just sit in nature for a bit. I used to drive my scuba diving buddy nuts because they want to see everything and they want to swim around. But some of my best scuba diving experiences were just sitting on the bottom, because then all the stuff comes out. You know, you're not charging around anymore. You're being receptive rather than probing and trying to explore. You're just looking at what's there and it will reveal itself. And yeah, yeah, I think just take a moment. I think that the show is geared, the tempo of the show is totally geared to that. There's meditation hidden within it to try and get you to slow down, get out of that fierce fight or flight kind of sense that we live so much of our lives in. So yeah, our closing remark would be just encourage everyone to find a place in nature and just observe for a little bit. Definitely put the phone on mute.
Ngā mihi, Thom, thank you so much. And thank you to all of our panellists for all of your whakaaro tonight. We're all Indigenous to the planet, says Dan, so let's be good ancestors. I loved Huhana saying everything's a creative moment. We all have creative potential to manifest meaningful change. Dolphins dreaming in sonar, well, the results were disappointing, said Ron, but let disappointments fuel your obsessions. There is a need for collective engagement, so move into the spaces that bring you obsession, that bring you joy, that fuel your passions. Questions that provoke. Be questioning, be caring, be curious, be emotional and feel, said Rebecca. Feel. Be emotional. Access those deep feelings, the frustrations, the joy, the things that bring us together. Work together, she said. And from Thom, slow down. Slow down. We have this frantic urgency, but we need to sit in nature. Don't stop at our skin. Rest everything from the inside, those inside colonies and communities, to outside of our skin and the connections that we have across the planet. That was one of the most joyful moments actually for me this evening, was the reminder that we are more than just our skin. We are connected in every single conceivable way, and not just to each other as humans, but to every single part of this planet. And that when we sit as part of it, it's a wonderful, restorative, rejuvenating and joyful thing for us as biological beings on this planet. To our extraordinary panellists, thank you all so much. Thom, Dan, Huhana and Rebecca, to Marshmallow, Laserfeast and Robin for travelling from the UK. Ngā mihi nui kia koutou katoa, mō koutou whakaaro whakahirehire I tēnei pō. To the British Council for your partnership, thank you so much. To Te Papa and Rongo Marairoa, for holding us tēnā koutou. And to all of you, thank you, as I said at the beginning, for coming out into this actually quite beautiful Wellington evening. Tonight has reminded us that art can help us feel what science reveals, that mātauranga teaches us relationship, that technology can illuminate, but it is our responsibility to respond. Our hope is that you leave here tonight alive with ideas, with provocations to mind, and with the sense that the connection between art, nature, science and mātauranga reflects the connection between us all. So as you've heard tonight, please make sure that you not only visit the Breathe exhibition, but you share your experiences, your connections with others. Let them know what is happening here and the different ways that we've provoked ourselves to think this evening. So ngā mihi nui kia koutou e te whānau. Thank you so much for being here, for being part of this conversation. It's a privilege to sit with you all this evening. Pō mari, good night. And may we end with a round of applause for our panellists. Thank you.